Gang is sexy. Hey, it only took us 4 months, 5 days, 13 hours, and 17 seconds to complete the first turn of Guderian's Blitzkrieg, the original Guderian's Blitzkrieg. Not really. It took me 3 nights playing just a couple hours here and there. Just like any other game, of course, I'm backtracking with the rules going from, was it the 4.3, whatever it is today, back to the original first edition, I guess, OCS rules, which, if you checked out my post or followed it, I'm liking these first edition rules. The supply rule it's a little more tedious when you first start. It encompasses a little bit more that you have to do, but I think it's a lot easier to handle as you play through the turn once you do your supply allocation. And then the air rules. I'm actually liking the air rules in this game, how you can intercept stacks flying in to do barat. Well, you could do that in the newer rules too, but like fighter stacks with the ability to double. I love that thing because I'm having some great air-to-air combats, and there are cases where, albeit a good die roll, the Soviets are winning some of these fights, okay, or some of these air fights. And while they haven't sent any German units to the junkyard yet, they have step lost, I think, a couple, and they've definitely forced some aborts. Now, granted, the German, the 109s and the 110Fs, they get just a moderately good die roll and they trash the Russian fighters and the Russian bombers or whatever. Okay, so this is Moscow of 41. And what I'm trying to determine here, because I have played SPI's Typhoon, make an adjustment here, is determining the path that I want to take as the aggressor or as the Axis. And this game's not based on, hey, let's go, we need to take Moscow games over. I need to go back and look at victory conditions again, but I think the Germans can win this thing nicely with 40 victory points. And when I look at the map, I can see Varnesh down in the corner is worth about 10. Then there's Kursk right here worth 5. Yelets is worth 5. Orel's worth 10. Bryansk is worth 10. That looks like -5. No, there's 40 points right there. So I wouldn't even. So it seems to me that Moscow being way up there, I'd only have to get to here and get my 40 points and then hang on. Yeah, well, we're not going to do that because Uncle Joe is sitting up there in Stalingrad, and we want Uncle Joe. Let's take a look at the casualties after the first day. Now this game is unique compared to other OCS, but because there are 2 turns for each player within one turn. And I think it's got something to do with these are weekly turns in the game as compared to like 4-day or something like that. But anyhow, there's 2 turns. So you go, German player goes, Russian player does his thing, then the German player goes again, then the Russian player goes again. So I mean, it's different, and that's why it took me a couple nights, 2-3 nights to do this. But here's our casualty list. Pretty obvious. The Russians, they always end up in the initial strike. Taking a big beating. And for the Germans, mostly recon units, because that's what you're going to sacrifice. But there's a Gross Deutschland regiment right there, which is an AAR of 5, and he's a pretty decent unit. He got smoked because he got trapped. So taking a look along the front line here, typical from what I understand from this game, playing the campaign from OCS, the Germans have just, the front line was right about where these supply trucks are at the start. And as you can see, the Germans are already, after one turn, not that. That's just where I keep my stacks. The Germans are already chased themselves out to the, what river's that? I don't even know what town that is. Lagoy or something like it. Lagoff. They're pushing across the river here in the south. Now, they're not making a lot of headway up here in the north. They have driven the Soviets off this first line here around Yelnya, and they're driving on Spa-Demonsk. And I thought to myself, as I was ending out this turn, I need to secure that with the Russians. I need to secure that. I need to secure Vyazma, and I need to secure Bryansk, which is very important. Look at that rail hub in Bryansk right there. So I need to secure that. The Germans, on the other hand, they only have 2 railroad units, and they're the only ones that can convert the rail lines. And I've got them one in the north, and I've got one in the south. But I'm thinking that might be a mistake because look at the major rail lines right through the middle of the map right here. So I think I'm going to end up having to shift one of those units into working here in the middle. The German rail line does reach out to here, at Roslavel, but this one over here hasn't even been started yet. And I think I need to work on that. Now, I don't know what the reinforcements have. I'll look at that later. So the intention for me right now from the Soviet side is to hold that line there all the way down to Bryansk. And then as I start to fall backwards, which is going to happen, there's no way around it, start to create a line along that highway there over to Orel, down to Livny, and then maybe on across, see if we can't cover Varnesh. But that's a lot of open ground right there. And armor in the clear terrain on the attack gets doubled. Armor in the defense in clear terrain does not get doubled. So I just had an attack over here with the Russians against the Panzer Division right here with those 2 armor units. That was 64 strength points, and the Germans got no doubling. They were on the other side of the river, obviously. And the Russians rolled like a 3 or a 4 with a -1. So they took the step loss on that, and all I did was back the Panzer Division up across the river. So they had an optional, so it didn't take a loss. I know it looks like massive amounts of supply on the table, but we're getting ready to do the supply phase, and a lot of that's going to disappear. And you sort of preload in supply before you start the turn. And then, of course, when they roll for supply, they get like the Russians got 60, and they come in Moscow, and it's up to the Soviet player where he wants to put them, or Varnesh. All right, and then as for the Germans, they come in at Smolensk, all right, which I know that was painful enough for the Germans to finally take that area. And they come down here at Konotop. All right, and then you move it from there. There is no tracing of supply to a source on the board's edge. All supply comes from the supply chits that are on the board. Like I say, when I say you front load, you have a phase where you put units that are going to be in full supply, they're going to be in low supply, or they're going to be no supply. Now, there is a rule for those of you that have I don't know, maybe you've played it, maybe you didn't see this rule, or you're going to play this. If you have supply on the table and it can reach a unit, you have to supply the units. You cannot say, no, I'm not giving him any supplies out of supply. If you have a headquarters that is supplying, let's say, 7 units, and you decide, okay, I want 6 of these units to be fully supplied, but that 7th unit, I don't want him to be fully supplied. I want him to be low. Well, you can't do that. You would fully supply those 6 units, and then the other unit that you didn't want to fully supply, he would have to be able to draw supply from a depot. He wouldn't be able to get it from the headquarters. So whatever the headquarters supplied, whatever level you determine it to be at, all units that they supply have to be at that same level. So if you choose full, they have to be full. If you choose low supply, they all have to be low supply. And if you choose between 2, the headquarters can do 1, and then whoever's going to be the other level of supply has to draw straight from a depot, which is what all the little yellow, and there's a lot of them. A lot of depots on here. Germans have taken some. Russians actually took a couple back. Airfields have been transferred back and forth. This airfield down here, I think, exchanged hands 4 times in these first this first turn, okay? They're important too. I got to get these air bases forward as we move. Also, you'll see that air base right there is out of supply. Another great rule that I like in this game. It's kind of similar to the new stuff too, but you don't, during the supply phase, whatever level your air base is, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that's how many supply points you need to keep that air base at that level. So in the supply phase, they draw supply just like a unit does. If you've got this is a level 2 German air base underneath here, and he will draw 2 supply points from somewhere. And then when you go to air unit refitting, you roll a dice and you multiply it by the supplied level of the airbase. So if the airbase is 2 and he's fully supplied to 2, you roll a dice, multiply it by 2, and then that's the number of air units that you can actually refit. And then they're good. They're refitted for the rest of the turn until you do an activity that causes them to fly back to the base and be inactive. They fly. Air to air in this game is awesome. So you fly out, there's a 109 sitting right there. He's been sitting out there for the whole turn pretty much. He flew out and Soviet air units would come in here to respond, like maybe from this base back here. They would fly in here to respond. And once they get within 5 hexes, this fighter can jump them. So, and then as long as he stays successful, he can stay out there on station. You can choose to return him, but once you return him to the base, he goes inactive. So that fighter, there's one there. There's two that, now, this to me is so far the best thing for air cover that I've seen yet at a game. As simple as this is. These 2 fighters up here. Now, there could have been more, but some of them got dealt with or got themselves in trouble. But these 2 guys up here thwarted some of these bomber attacks trying to come in here and hit. Like, I wanted to fly some Soviets in here and hit some of this power that was going to break through here in this area. But those fighters sitting where they were at that distance apart from each other, I couldn't get nothing in there because the Russian fighters are not as strong as the German. And same thing down here. Now, I was able to slip around and hit this motorized division right here because they have bombers sitting way in the back that have like 185 range, or tactical bombers. And they were able to fly around and avoid those fighters. So this is probably one of the first games I played where I really got to think about the use of these fighters and how to provide air cover for these spearheads that are moving out. All right, so I've played a few of the OCS games, and I've enjoyed all of them, but I've only played one turn of this, and I'm having a blast with this. When I sit down and actually play, I seem to stay here quite longer than I do with most games. All right, so there we go. We finished out. We're going to move on to the next turn. The Germans are pressing already. They're doing okay. Their losses are minimal. Like I say, mostly recon units compared to the massive losses the Soviets have already taken. And of course, typical. There's all your Soviet reinforcements that'll be coming on. All right. But the Germans have quite a bit too. They still have 4 major divisions that'll come on the board. All right, so this Hexy, let's get this up. We're at the end of the first turn. We're getting ready to start the second turn, which is 28 September to 4 October 1941. Let's go take Moscow. There's a cafe there I like. All right, get this up. Talk to y'all soon.